Farewell from darkness, breathing of the light, new hope, awakening, renewal, freshness, youth. This first month of spring is here, with which Mother Nature winks at us in the new fruitful year. We know two key elements of spring: the awakening that takes place around the time of the equinox, and the final arrival that comes in the end of April, which has been preserved to this day in the ritual of so-called Jurjevanje. Yuri means George, who took over the native god and awakens from the underworld and defeats the winter. At this time, god and goddess in their youthful manner rise from the underworld, get engaged, and start a new fertile cycle in a cyclical year, after which we attend their wedding by the bonfire at the summer solstice. The celebration of spring equinox is not widely known in Slovenia. Only in some parts of Posočje, western parts by Soča River, bonfires were lit on this spring milestone as a continuation of the winter tradition of strengthening the sun's power. Handmade green wreaths were hung on trees in some places. Some left them to the wind, believing that the wreaths then took over the energy of the tree, and the people took them home for protection. Our grandmothers used to say that on Gregor's Day, on 12th of March, birds get married. On this day it is customary to descend the boats or little lights into the rivers and creeks. These so-called Gregorčki are named after Saint Gregor, who celebrates on 12th of March. A few hundred years ago, when the Julian calendar was in use, he celebrated on the first day of spring, which is of course the equinox. But neither Gregor or the new faith, with its saints replacing the ancient deities, have succeeded in destroying the awareness that the ritual is an ancient tradition of worshipping the awakening of nature in its original form. Celebrating the departure of winter and the arrival of the new year is unique in Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia and Lithuania. According to this ancient custom, people make a straw doll. They can also dress it up and decorate it with jewelry. This tradition is followed by the entire population, including children. Then the procession joins in, carrying the doll around the village from house to house. Along the way they immerse Marzanna doll into every stream and puddle. Children also carry juniper twigs on this tour. In the evening, young adults take over the ceremony, and first they light the juniper twigs, then the Marzanna doll. The burning doll is then taken outside of the village and thrown into the water. No one should touch it in the water. On the way home, however, no one is allowed to look back, as this means death. The Church, despite the efforts, had failed to erase this powerful tradition. Even the attempt to establish a new idea of drowning Judas Iscariot in the 18th century was unsuccessful. The puppet, of course, depicts the goddess Morana, who represents death or barren part of the year. The rite of cremation and drowning is a farewell to winter, just as is here in Slovenia when we do the burial of the so-called Pust. The customs are connected in their base, however, they differ in their physical form. A very strong symbolism of this ritual is prohibition of turning back. Over the winter, in contact with all three worlds, with its forces, we come to certain insights and wisdoms. With the farewell of winter, however, we are giving the opportunity again to carry out the goals with the awareness and gratitude that the opportunity for a new beginning in a new cycle has been given to us again. Looking back actually means death in a way, because looking back in time, repeating old patterns and mistakes, having regrets can make it impossible to us to grow as a person and reach our potentials. If we do not reach them, we more or less vegetate, which eventually leads to numbness. Regardless of the date, a ceremony was held here in Kast region in southwest Slovenia, in honor of Dajbog's version of Dashbog, at a time when the trees were waking up. Dajbogets represents the sun's power, which ensures the awakening of the entire visible nature and the sleeping nature of a man. In the sacred place, the girls in white sang an ancient song in a stone circle, and that has been preserved to this day. The priest, so-called Božeglav, literally meaning God's head, placed a jug with a stick of hazel branch in the natural altar, with help of which they also foretold what the harvest would be like. Goddess Vesna is known in the Slavic world widely as the bringer of the spring, but in Slovenia her cult is not really attested. However, we know Vesnas in plural as great sorceress and priestesses. When spring starts to wake up, we should definitely mention the symbol of 8-pointed star, which, generally speaking, represents the predominance of light over darkness, which is why it appears so widely on Easter eggs in springtime, in spring rituals and milestones, especially at weddings. The goddess behind this star is Zarya. The awakening of spring and its final resurrection continues into the month of April, when there will be another video about the April rituals and painted eggs called pisanice.